Please take your seats and silence your devices. The program will begin shortly. Please make your way to the opening plenary. Devex World 2022 begins in 5 minutes. Please take your seats and silence your devices. The program will begin shortly. Please stand by. The program is about to begin.
We are living in a world where we need to focus in on equity and justice, be it climate justice, be it health justice, be it food justice. I think we all need to hone into that word and say that the inequity in this world is what has brought us to where we are today. And that is what we as a development community need to come to grips with.
We have to shift our economies and societies to a model that is sustainable. And we have to do so before it's too late. Time is really running out.
We must adopt sometimes a little bit more a can-do approach. When I've seen in what kind of record time vaccines were developed, we should take this as an encouragement also for other challenges when it comes, for instance, to the energy transition.
The key step that need to be taken is invest on indigenous peoples and local communities. We are the masters of protecting the nature, and we have our solutions. We wanted to be in the decision making, and we wanted to get direct access funding so that can help us to make a progress.
There's more than enough private capital to meet all our development goals, so we've now got to get serious about being much more effective in mobilizing private capital at scale that wants to invest for positive social and environmental impact and make sure that investment flows with integrity.
We need to be finding ways to connect those who are displaced to the world around them and help them to develop their own path to self-reliance in the future.
I believe the international development community is up for the challenges because we are more attentive than we've ever been before. We're getting out of a world in which we tell other people what to do and are beginning to trust others to solve their own problems with our support.
As we face the challenges ahead of us, we can look back at the successes that we've had in the past and ensure that if we come together collectively, build more trust, we can double the success and achieve it even faster.
The world we see today is a world of coming together, collaboration and cooperation, no isolationism. That's what we need to make the world a better place and to have economic prosperity and social wealth in the world and sustainable and lasting peace. We need to come together, and time to do so is now.
Please welcome to the stage Devex President and Editor-in-Chief, Raj Kumar.
Good morning. Good morning. It is fantastic to be back in person in Washington, D.C. with so many of you in the room. It is truly the best of both worlds. We've got about 1,000 people registered here at the Mead Center for American Theater in Washington, D.C., and thousands more joining us from all around the world online. Welcome. Thank you wherever you are in the world. Thanks for being a part of Devex World. The global development community, of course, knows its calendar well. We have the UN General Assembly in the fall. We have Davos in the winter. There's the World Health Assembly in the spring, and so many more. And at Devex, we thought something is maybe missing. We need the seriousness of purpose that you get from an event that's official, a UN event, something like you see in the image right here. But we want to marry that with the sense of energy, the sense of changing the world, the sense of fun that you get from a Silicon Valley tech conference. And that's, if you can imagine those two conferences came together and had a baby, it would be Devex World. That is what we are all about today. So I hope you're in for a lot of fun. Speaking of children, of babies, I wanted to show you this photograph and see if it's recognizable to some of you. I think this young girl is someone that many of you, or at least a few of you, might recognize. I'm looking around the room. But we should all know who this is because we all actually have a very deep personal connection to this young girl. I will tell you more about that in a minute. But first, I want to talk about stories and headlines. As the editor-in-chief of a news organization, that's how I think. And I thought to myself, what's the headline for Devex World? And when you talk to global development leaders, I think you'll find there's a tremendous sense of uncertainty right now. There's a sense that there are many overlapping crises. We have a crisis of food, of debt, of energy. We have an evolving crisis of COVID, of conflict, of climate, and another C, the Cold War with China, budding in the development sector. And so all of these combine into an idea that perhaps there's a new normal in global development, and maybe that new normal isn't really what we want it to be. Maybe it's a normal that's tremendously challenging. And so just a couple of data points, I could give you hundreds about how challenging the moment is that we find ourselves in right now. But just a couple that maybe show how stark it is. Before the pandemic, 53% of 10-year-olds could not read a simple sentence. And now it's 70% of 10-year-olds in the world. Right? It's a shocking statistic. We have another statistic here for you, which is from a recent poll of young Africans who were asked whether they plan to leave their own country. And 2/3 in a very recent poll said they plan to emigrate in just the next few years. Think of all of that tremendous talent of young people and where they see their future. So there's enormous challenges. But when I think about those challenges, I also remember how the world has addressed them in the past. And this is a photograph from 1944 from the Bretton Woods Conference. It was held at a hotel in New Hampshire. World War II was still going on. And world leaders said, we need to reimagine the global architecture, the financial system, the monetary system, the organizations that global development today is built on were largely born then, the IMF and the World Bank. And then in 2015, leaders got together again and said, we need to have a set of goals that the world can get around together, a set of sustainable development goals. And these should be goals that are aspirational and will take 15 years to get there. That's a long time, but we can get there by 2030. In fact, right now, we're all here gathered at the midpoint of that. We are right at the precise midpoint. To commemorate it, I'm wearing some SDG running shoes, by the way, to remind us that we are still in a race to get there. But the truth is, the numbers look pretty bad. The chances of achieving the sustainable development goals, they don't look very good. We're really off track. So the question that I want to pose to all of us is, we're gathered here today in Washington and online. What can inspire us from these prior crises, from these prior moments of tremendous challenge? What can we as a global development community do to maybe change the trajectory or even to change that headline? Can we build a better normal for global development? Can we imagine something different? And when you're faced with a tough question like this, often the best thing I find to do is just to call a friend. And so if this works, and I hope it does, I thought I'll give a call to a friend of mine and see what he thinks about a better normal for global development. My friend is Kennedy Odede. Some of you may know Kennedy. He grew up in Africa's largest slum, Kibera. He started from nothing and built Shofco, which is now a really important local community-based organization. And Kennedy is working with slum dwellers and informal settlements really around the world. And there he is. Hey, Kennedy.
Hi, Haraj. Thank you so much for having me here.
Hey, nice to catch you on your cell phone. I think you're in Cape Town today. Is that right?
Yes, I'm in Cape Town today. Yes.
Well, just pretend it's you and me and there's not thousands of people watching. I just want to know, when you think about this crazy global development sector that we're in, that you get to witness both at the local level and I see you at global convenings all the time, what do you think we can do to reimagine it? How can we frame this as a better normal for global development when there's so much crisis in the world right now?
Thank you, Raj, and for having me today. And hello, everyone. I am Kennedy Odede, founder of Shofco, Kenya's largest grassroots movement of the poor. As you said, Raj, we are facing unprecedented challenges: famine, food crisis, inflation, political instability, COVID, and recovery. The problems have never been more daunting. The stake never higher. Our children and children around the world are at risk of living in poor conditions, and children are living in really poor conditions, and the ones are at risk of living in a potential war. You know what I mean? But this is also a moment where we have a new and undervalued solution. I grew up in Kibera slums, and I can say the opportunity of putting those who have experienced the challenges in the position to solve them is a game-changing. For the first time, we could actually end problems that are experiencing, like poverty and a persistent lack of dignity. So, what is better? I want to challenge you all today. If our sector can truly shift, not just talk about it, but really shift power, resources, and decision-making to proximate leaders to communities on a transformational scale, new innovations, solutions, and a new world is within reach. So instead of talking about 25% of resources or 20% of resources to local leaders, let's talk about 80% or more. Let's fundamentally change how and who solve the most pressing problems of our world today. Then I believe in the power of human potential. We will unlock catalytic new solutions. Those who wear the shoes, they know where those shoes pinch. And we can design a new shoe, a new vision for our world and for our communities. Thank you, Raj.
Thank you, Kennedy. I knew it would be worth calling you up on the phone. Thank you for taking my call. Thank you, Kennedy. See you, buddy. I think Kennedy helped to inspire us that there is another way to see these issues, especially from somebody who's so close to them every day. I just want to share a couple more data points since I gave you a couple of really big challenges. Here are a couple that maybe can show you what's possible. Did you know during the pandemic, 800 million people got connected to the internet for the first time? For the first time in just a couple of years. We are now at about 5 billion people on Earth who are connected to the internet. Now there's tremendous inequalities and gaps in access, of course. But think of the opportunity for all the organizations here today who work on telehealth, or who work on distance learning, or who look at economic opportunities and financial inclusion. Think about 800 million new people online in just 2 years and what is possible. Also, look at this chart, which I took from Bill Gates' recent book on pandemics, and how much more quickly the world has been able to develop vaccines. That's maybe the real star of this period of challenge we've just gone through with COVID. It's so quick compared to historical perspectives. The fastest before now was mumps, the mumps vaccine. And this is Geraldine Hillman, who we all have a connection to because, in fact, her father was the virologist who developed the vaccine for mumps, and he developed it by taking the strain of virus of mumps from her. And that very same strain, if you've had the MMR vaccine, which I'm guessing everyone in this room and probably almost everyone listening online has had, you've had Geraldine's strain in you. So we all have this tremendous personal connection, and I hope it gives you a sense of possibility. As anytime you see kids and you hear about these kinds of innovations, I think you get a sense of what's really possible in the world. So with that in mind, I wanted to show you some more baby pictures. These are some kids who didn't know it at the time, but they ended up becoming my Devex colleagues. So this is long before they knew they'd be joining an independent news organization covering global development and global health and humanitarian response and sustainability. And they're a little older now. Our team is, I guess, 140 people or so around the world right now. And what we're doing every day is in a way connected to that picture of Geraldine because we're trying to immunize the global development community too. We're trying to immunize this community against a sense of apathy or against a sense of misinformation, a lack of accountability, or really a sense of despair that nothing can change. And we're using our tools of journalism to bring that to you every day. This is the team that broke the story of excess mortality data being withheld at the WHO because of political pressure from the Indian government, that broke the story of impact investing gone wrong at UNOPS, that highlighted some disparities in pay for women at USAID that led to some important rule changes there. This is the team that figured out how to give free access to all of our career content and job information to the Peace Corps volunteers very quickly when they were sent back home during COVID and they had no job to go back to. And this is the team that connects hundreds of organizations, local NGOs, many of you here, global corporations, to funding, to grants and contracts and opportunities across this diverse development sector. We do all this. We publish the newsletters that are in your inbox every day, and we do all this for all of you. I hope you get a chance to meet a lot of those DevXers today. We have many from all over the world who've flown in here to Washington, D.C., and many who are joining online as well. I hope you get a chance to talk with them. I'm really, really proud of what this team has accomplished. And I just want to mention some of the other people you're going to get a chance to meet today. We have young leaders joining us in person and online, and I hope you'll connect with them too, from Atlas Corps, from the Donald M. Payne International Development Fellowship Program, from Opening Doors Training Program, and the Adolescent Girls Advisory Council. So please say hi to them. I think you all know the African proverb that if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. That is certainly our ethos as an organization at Devex. And that's really how we view partnership. And an event like this could not happen without tremendous partners. And I just want to take a moment to really thank them. We have innovation partners, the PepsiCo Foundation, Smile Train, World Food Program USA, and World Vision, Changemaker partners, Action Against Hunger, and MSD for Mothers. We have a reception tonight, and our partner for that is Food for the Hungry. And we have a number of underwriting program partners who have really helped to build the program that you're all going to get to experience today. The Global Health Advocacy Incubator, Atlas Network, GCI Health, Peace Corps, RTI, and UNOJA. We have a travel partner, Diversity Travel, and a fellowship partner in the Global Fund for Women. So I hope you take a moment to just help me thank those incredible partners for making this event possible. And now, as we begin, here is my conversation with Bill Gates. It's great to be with you. Thank you for taking the time to join us at Devex World this year.
Glad to.
We're thrilled to have you, and congratulations on the book. I want to just dive right in. You have a funny moment in the book where you talk about how you really predicted the last pandemic, but lots of people didn't pay attention until after this pandemic hit, and suddenly millions more started watching the TED Talk that you gave. This time you've come out with a book on how to prevent the next pandemic. Hopefully more people are paying attention. I can tell you the people here in the global health community certainly are. And one of your big ideas I just wanted to start off with, which is this idea of a germ team. It's a global epidemic response and mobilization team. Maybe just tell us a little bit more about that. You've been at the forefront of creating new global health agencies like CEPI and Gavi. Is this how we should think of it? Is it like a new global health agency? Is it another acronym in the global health architecture?
No, I don't think we should create something that's separate from the WHO. This is, it could be that it's slightly kept special, but it's a piece of the WHO. WHO, declares pandemics. WHO's in a position to make sure people are practicing. The key point is that if any country doesn't get the right resources, then a disease can go global. And so unlike a lot of stuff the foundation does, where it's about health aid to help developing countries, in this case, even if it was just for the rich countries alone, the idea of stopping outbreaks before they go global is a great investment because it prevents the incredible loss that we saw in this pandemic, and the next one could have a higher fatality rate. So like you see in the movies, the WHO should have a group that stays dedicated and is available to jump in, particularly to help countries with limited capacity.
And WHO obviously presents challenges. There's 194 member states. It's different than some of these other agencies you've helped to design and set up, which are more like public-private partnerships, are a little more fit for purpose. Obviously, you've thought through those trade-offs, and you think the credibility that the WHO brings is so key to this that they have to be in the driver's seat for germ.
Absolutely. It's countries working together with other countries. And so having it be, the country saying, hey, you're not practicing enough, and that's creating a risk for all of us, or boosting that global capability so that, they can respond immediately. The big problem with pandemics is that they don't go global very often. And so it's easy, even for an incredible group like CDC, they didn't keep a team dedicated. So the question of, okay, how do you scale up diagnostics very quickly, which could have been done, didn't happen during those first 100 days that are very key. And so by having this team, we would always be ready, and they'd make sure every country was participating.
A lot of the focus on our lack of readiness was around vaccine delivery. There's obviously the supply question, but you focus a lot on once we even had the supply, did we have the cold chain set up, or did we have messaging to governments to say, hey, this is what's coming and be ready for it? What do you think broke down there? Where did our global health architecture kind of fall apart when it came to getting vaccines once they were produced into the hands of people who needed them in low and middle income countries?
Well, the first point is that you want to stop outbreaks when they're fairly local, and then the vaccine question doesn't come up. Having that vaccine capability in case you do have an escape is super important. And you want vaccines that are infection blocking, and you want a lot of them very quickly. Given that you have finite manufacturing capacity, the likelihood that the rich countries, the leaders, will feel huge pressure to get access to those vaccines, it's doubtful you'll have a perfect allocation. The allocation was closer to just than for many diseases because the richer countries have most of the people over 60, and that's where the big death rate was. But it was incredibly unjust. I mean, old people in, say, South Africa should have gotten vaccines before young people in the United States, or even then in India. And so it's always tough when it's, shutting down all of society. The ideal is to just get the capacity up so that within a very short period, you can make enough for the entire world. We want to have more locations, including over time some in Africa, but the overall capacity will help you achieve the ideal, since it's not clear people are going to ignore their voters in terms of how they let the vaccine get distributed.
Yeah, we knew vaccine nationalism was a thing before COVID, but we really saw, what it's like. And I guess that's why a lot of governments now say, hey, we want to bring manufacturing capacity for the next vaccines into their own borders, right? And I wonder what you think is a realistic plan. Are we going to have a vaccine production capability maybe in Senegal, Rwanda, South Africa, or are we going to really realistically see it in many, many more countries than that? Where do you think we should be aiming to go?
Well, the world only had one factory, which happened to be in the U.S., that was a standby factory, Emergent Biosolutions, and they managed to completely fail to contribute in a timely fashion. So, I'm not sure standby factories are such a good idea. The vaccine market is very diversified. That is, to get super low prices, the Gates Foundation has funded places like Bharat, BioE, Biopharma, and Serum to have all the key vaccines. And that's why the Gavi prices have gone down dramatically. You really want to have enough supply to get low prices and not so much supply that you bankrupt all the vaccine manufacturers. And, so we are investing in new modular techniques that make the capital cost of having a factory a lot lower. In fact, Melinda and some foundation people were in Senegal this week looking at the expansion plans they have there. They've been making yellow fever vaccine, and now they're adding several more and increasing their capacity. So I think if we're careful on this and make sure we have an architecture that works in the years where there's not a pandemic, but can also work in the years when the next pandemic comes, I think we can have huge capacity, include Africa more and more over time. But it's not easy because people are very picky about vaccine quality. They're not like, oh, it was made in some wonderful country, so we don't need a good regulator. Making sure like that the Chinese regulator becomes a world-class regulator, that'll help get more supply in. And so we invest in regulators in Africa and many places to enable this sort of global picture and low price cost for Gavi and others.
Yeah, and you bring up that architecture again. I want to ask you about the Global Fund in that context, right? Because the Global Fund has been trying to fill this gap. They're vertically oriented, but in the end, they think about health systems just like you do, and you see it all as one thing. They're now trying to fill some of this pandemic preparedness gap. Is that the right place for the Global Fund to be going? And how would that work vis-a-vis this germ team that would be part of the WHO?
Yeah, Global Fund is for funding country plans, and they've developed expertise in their three key diseases, HIV, TB, and malaria, and now helping with health systems, including for pandemic preparedness. They're not the global surveillance, epidemiologist, data modeling group that we need to resource WHO to have. I love the Global Fund. That Gavi and the Global Fund are two of the greatest partnerships that the foundation has been part of and have had huge impact. We'll see at the September fundraising for Global Fund how much more than the $14 billion we got 3 years ago we can get. It's challenging, and all these aid budgets now face real pressure because of refugee costs and food costs and overall budgets. With Ukraine, you've got defense costs, electricity subsidization costs, and we're still digging out of debt levels and problems that the pandemic has presented us. So these are challenging times in terms of keeping the aid to global health at the levels that it needs to be.
Yeah, and on that point, I mean, in a way, the model for global health for the last 20 years or so, and you've been a pioneer in this, is kind of using private dollars to leverage governments to do the right thing on certain disease areas, let's say. Is that era of kind of leverage ending now with aid budgets getting so cut back and with governments just saying, these are not the places we want to go? And do we need to move maybe to a new moment where private philanthropy says, even with the challenges around credibility and legitimacy, you know what, we're just going to fund directly at a higher level in these areas? Because everyone leveraging everyone, at some point, maybe there's just not enough there left. And pandemic preparedness seems like an example where governments just have not stepped up, even given the very clear warnings you and others have given.
Well, since pandemic preparedness is a benefit to the rich countries, it shouldn't be thought of as aid in any way, shape, or form. It's part of either their defense budget for bioterrorism or their health budget, to prevent the deaths. And so certainly private philanthropy isn't there to help rich countries do that work. I mean, we can get involved to some degree, but of all the things that they should fund, they've seen $14 trillion in cost. And whenever we've had world disasters in the past, like World War II, we actually, governments came together to try and prevent it happening again. So even though it's been slow, I'm still hopeful the governments will come through. There's no way private philanthropy has the scale or the legitimacy to fill that function, nor can private philanthropy, fund that high a percentage of the global health needs. That is rich country aid budgets. The Gates Foundation is 6% of global fund. We're like 12% of Gavi. We're fairly big in the upstream R&D piece, right there with the U.S. government, or sometimes even more. But on the delivery piece, you're never going to fund that without the generosity of the rich governments.
I mean, so many other wealthy families have not gotten into this philanthropy game in the way you are, and nowhere near the scale. What do you think is holding them back? I mean, I'm thinking about your at least a one-time next-door neighbor in Mackenzie Scott, and how massive her philanthropy has become overnight. What do you think of that approach? Do you think that might help get other philanthropists out to do bigger and bolder things? Where do you think we are? I mean, you founded the Giving Pledge with Warren Buffett, and still it's only about 10% of the world's billionaires have signed up to it. What's needed to get us to that next level?
Well, I think philanthropy will continue to increase, but these are individual decisions that people are making, and they need to connect with something that they understand and that they see very high impact. Giving Pledge, is encouraging people to do bolder things, do more, do it sooner in their life. But these crises we're facing right now, philanthropy is only going to scale up at a gradual level. So it's not, in no way is it a substitute for government money. The global health work we've done is very fulfilling. And there are lots of areas, things like neglected diseases or some of the key innovations that I do hope a lot of other philanthropists come in because, per dollar, the global health work, there's this whole movement called effective altruism where they compare, and, global health comes out as very much one of the highest impacts again and again.
But a lot of effective altruists, while they certainly believe in funding global health, don't want to seem to fund Global Fund, for example, or Gavi. They don't seem to want to fund the big institutions, which has been such a key part of your strategy. What would you say to them about what they're getting wrong about funding those institutions?
We have so many ways that people can contribute to global health. We have the End Fund, where if you even give $5 million, we can say which disease in which countries you're preventing or eliminating, and you can go and see that. You really need people to have a hands-on feel. Global Fund is getting better at going after philanthropists, but even in their, high hopes, it doesn't get to a huge percentage of the money. Obviously I help with that as much as I can, but things that are overseas, when people look at, civil war in Ethiopia and, the dysfunction, it is easier to see giving at home. And so it's always going to require, traveling over there and, some getting on that learning curve, and we're trying to help as much as we can with that.
Well, How to Prevent the Next Pandemic. It's an important book. It has a lot of those innovations in it, and it's a great way to kick us off today at Devex World. Thank you for being a part of it, Bill.
Thank you.
Please welcome senior reporter Teresa Welsh.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm probably the umpteenth person today to say I'm so excited to be here in person and getting a chance to finally catch up with people, run into folks I know, meet new people. So thanks so much for being with us. Welcome also to our virtual audience. We're excited to have you here for our conversation. I'm Teresa Welsh. I'm a senior reporter based here in Washington. I write Devex Dish. Devex is food systems newsletter. You can follow us for all things food systems. We'll be talking a little bit about that later in this track. This is business transforming development. So we'll be talking about the role that the private sector has to play in meeting the SDGs. My colleague Stephanie Beasley and I will be bringing you a group of panels to talk about different industries and how we can make them more sustainable and focused on the SDGs. And you'll also have the opportunity to hear from some of our partners today. So thank you so much for being with us today. And without further ado, I would like to welcome our first panel on stage. So I'd like to welcome Stephanie Benedetto, who's CEO and founder of Queen of Raw, and Anshu Gupta, who's founder and director of Goonj. Thanks so much to you both for being with us today.
Thank you for having us.
So I'm really excited to have this conversation. My mother is an avid sewer, and so I was actually just visiting my family in Minnesota, and there are scraps of fabric everywhere in her house. My former childhood bedroom, we now refer to as the craft barn, and she's a quilter, and there's scraps of fabric. So I'm really excited to get to talk to you guys about upcycling in the textile industry and ways to avoid waste in that industry. So thanks to you both for being with us.
Thank you.
So Stephanie, I would love to start with you. We're talking about the circular economy today. What does that have to do with the textile industry, and why is that such an important attitude to have when we're talking about textiles?
I love that you called this circular economy, because the key word there is economy. This is an economic principle, and I think I'm really passionate about how we can build massively powerful solutions that make sense for people, for planet, but also for profit. And so when you're talking about that waste that your family has in their own homes, add that up when you're also talking about enterprise customers, and it's to the tune of $288 billion a year worth of unused fabric that just sits in warehousing collecting dust or being burned or sent to landfill. And by some accounts, that textile industry and all that waste is the number 2 polluter in the world of clean water globally, right? SDG 6. But if you flip that, it also means that fashion, textiles, supply chain has the power to solve the world's water crisis if we rethink how we do things. And that's why we've been really excited to build software and marketplaces to help businesses find all that waste and then do something with it. Reuse it, resell it, recycle it with a record and proof of their actions. And by doing that, some of our enterprise customers have saved 15% of their bottom line in just 1 year, just by finding and selling this waste. And not only that, they saw 3 times the conversion rate in their online direct-to-consumer business just by talking about the good work they're doing. So that's what it means to me, and I know together we can change the world.
Thanks so much for sharing that with us. For our audience that might not be familiar, tell us a little bit about Queen of Raw and why you started the company and what it is that you hope to achieve.
My family has been in the fashion and textiles business for over 100 years. In 1896, my great-grandfather came over on a ship from Austria. He landed at Ellis Island, and he settled into the Lower East Side in New York, the original Jewish garment district. He was an immigrant chasing the American dream, and he had to make a living. So what did he do? He found materials and supplies nearby, old fabrics and furs and things immigrants had brought over on the ships with them, but they weren't using anymore. And he repurposed them into the most beautiful fashion garments, and he sold it to local customers. And it was an incredibly profitable, successful business. And now, he didn't talk about it as circular economy. At the end of the day, that's very much what it was. And that's truly inspired how we think about the technologies that we're building. How do we build massively powerful software and marketplaces to help businesses do just what my great-grandfather did and empower everyone from enterprise companies to people like your family, students, makers, crafters, and quilters, so that they can reuse, resell, and recycle all this waste, keep it out of landfill, and turn what would be pollution into profit. And to date, we've already saved over 1 billion gallons of water, and we're just getting started. Really proud of that because it's enough clean water for 1.4 million people to drink around the world for 3 years. So,
wow. Yeah, I can definitely say after witnessing my mother, quilting is a great way to reuse unwanted fabric. She's got boxes all throughout the room of different color palettes. So when she needs a certain color, she can go in and find the little teeny tiny piece that fits with what she's working on. Anshu, I want to bring you into the conversation. Your model focuses on exchanging material for labor and skill. Tell us about why that is important for Gunj.
I think the most important part is the circular economy, to be honest, comes later. What the world is not realizing is the need of clothing itself. When you say that half the world does not get 2 meals a day or 1/3 of the world, whatever the number, okay, it's in billions. With a very narrow vision, we think that people are hungry, which is absolutely fine. It is visible. What we are not understanding that the people who are hungry also do not have access to the basics. And basic, when I say, I talk about clothing also. Right? You talk about 3 basic needs of humankind, you say food, cloth, and shelter. When you talk about MDGs, SDGs, you will never find clothing written as a subject. So I don't know how we ignored it, how we forgot that clothing is a very basic need of humankind. There is abundance, but there's also a huge amount of need. So when we talk about upcycling, when we talk about circular economy, I think the first part of the circularity is that it goes to the people who need it, who desperately need it. In many, many countries, you have more deaths in winters due to lack of clothing than earthquake or floods.
Wow.
And we are not understanding this as a subject, right? It is, so when we started years back, so now it's been 24 years of this work, we only focused on this particular basic need. We said people suffer due to lack of clothing. People get into a debt cycle forever because they need clothing. Today, if you have bread here and if I'm not wearing any cloth here, there is food, there is cloth. The first thing which I'll pick up is cloth. But people like us are not understanding that. The other thing, the cloth has always been a disaster relief material or a charitable subject object. You need a flood to be flooded with clothes. Why so? So we said that it needs to move out of charity because charity kills dignity of people, right? And it can be used as a currency. The barter economy can come back, where on one side you have the urban, underused, unused retail chain wastage, which still has life, and the optimum utilization has not happened. On one side, that is a currency. On the other side, it is the wisdom of the community. So community will decide that they need to make a village road. They will make a road, and they will be rewarded in kind. So barter economy is revived. Dignity is maintained. Fine. Decision making is in the hands of last person. So that's the whole model of reviving the barter economy by using second-hand goods we're doing. Whatever is left over, whatever is non-usable, is converted into products and hundreds and different kind of products, but we are not upcycling for the people who can pay a huge amount of it. We are actually upcycling for the people who cannot afford. So old torn jeans, instead of just becoming a fashionable bag, can also become a school bag for millions of kids. Fine? I'm carrying something. I wanted to carry a pack. What is this? It's your own cotton, torn, used cloth, which is the best possible, cheapest possible sanitary pad in the world.
Right.
Right? Millions and millions of women are using sand, ash, jute bags, rugs, rags, cow dung, anything and everything.
Yeah, that's not clean.
Yeah, and this can become a solution. So what I'm saying is that circularity means first, let's take care of the basic need of humankind as cloth itself, as material itself. And then whatever is not usable, use it for the larger population of the world, not to sell just in the shops of New York or New Delhi. That's the whole idea.
Exactly. That sounds like really the true meaning of the circular economy, right? You've got all pieces of it coming back around. Stephanie, I want to talk a little bit about scale. How do you think about this issue, whether it's, informing new vendors that Queen of Raw exists? How do you get your name out there and get companies to be thinking about this as something that can be successful at scale?
I love that you use that word scale, because I think for so long, people thought about sustainability and the circular economy as a nice to have, right? And that it wasn't scalable. It was only good for little pilot projects or little eco-conscious collections. But in order to drive massive impact environmentally and economically, we need to build solutions that are massively scalable across industries and around the world. And so when we first started Queen of Raw in 2018, we would go around in the New York City fashion district to all the big brands and retailers, tell them about our solution. And a lot of times we ended up only talking to the sustainability departments. And don't get me wrong, they are your brand champions. They're incredibly powerful, probably even more today than ever before. But at the time, they didn't have a lot of direction in the business, and they weren't fully integrated. They didn't have a budget. And fast forward to today, of course, these issues have become a top priority for every C-suite around the world. What we have since seen is that we need the participation of all the C-suite in order to bring out that change. We need the CEOs setting the corporate agendas, the CMOs doing the marketing and the storytelling, the CFOs who deal with this waste and financial liability every day, the COOs who deal with the operations, supply chain, procurement. And when you get all of them in a room together, and when you show them massive technology that can help them automate and scale these solutions, it's a win-win-win for all their stakeholders. How do you say no to that, right? And so we spent a lot of time building really powerful partnerships in order to drive that scale on a national level, on a global level, but also on a local level. During COVID, we formed the New York City Circular City Initiative. It was backed by the NYC EDC. We joined with H&M, Unilever, Cisco, Goldman Sachs, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and a number of really powerful organizations. And we created a white paper that's available on circularnyc.org, showing how many good jobs could be created and how much money could be saved and made by New York City going circular in the coming years. And not just about what laws need to change on the books. It was about, here are the solutions like Queen of Raw that can help businesses offset that coming legal liability and drive true change. And I think we need more of those kinds of cross-industry collaboration and partnerships with now the technology of blockchain and machine learning to really be able to drive that change and communicate it to the world.
And I think, more and more you have employees of those companies too who want to see that. My family apparently is just obsessed with fabric, but one of my cousins is a designer in New York. And that's something that she struggles with in the fashion industry is, okay, I'm working for this major designer. What role am I playing in this? What role can my company be playing to make this more sustainable? And she's really thinking about her future in that industry and the ethics behind it.
Everyone can be a part of it. We deal from 1 yard to 1 million yards plus, right? We're all part of the problem, but also all part of the solution.
Anshu, tell us a little bit about the reaction from the communities that you work with to, be able to have these opportunities where they have the dignity to do these projects, improve their own circumstances while also contributing to the circular economy.
When you value people for what they are, the moment they feel valued, they're a part of it. So what we are saying is that we need to stop the words like donor beneficiary because you need to take people as a stakeholder. Mm-hmm. And this is very ironical that when I give time, I am a donor, and when the community gives time, there is still beneficiary. Mm-hmm. When I put my skill, I am a donor. When the community puts a skill, there is still beneficiary. So that language has to change. I think in the last 2 decades, we have just done that. We've changed that language. We go and we say that we don't know how to dig a well. Fine. We don't know how to weave bamboo to make a bamboo bridge. Fine. And I'll not come with a solution of a concrete bridge, fine, because that's not in my hand, but you know it. Fine. You work on it. If I give you a trouser today and come tomorrow and say it is mine, you will say it is yours. But when you make your own road and you get a trouser and I come and say it is mine, you can say that it might be yours, but I've earned it. Mm-hmm. So we're changing that language. And that is the reason people are becoming a part of it. And there are very few concepts where the decision making is in the hands of people for whom decisions are made. Mm-hmm. Right? Otherwise, people like us go and say every village will have a road. No, they don't need a road. Maybe, their priority is a water body or something. That's why it is accepted. Fine. It brings dignity to people for sure, because we are not sitting on the top and then talking about it, or we are making decisions on their behalf. That is why it is accepted. Fine. They have a sense of earning. They have a sense of respect. That's why it is accepted. We are also, saying that it also creates a huge amount of employment. Right? Because imagine the hundreds and thousands of people converting hosiery into undergarments for all the people, converting jeans or trousers into bags for all the people, converting this cotton cloth into sanitary pads. So that's how this entire ecosystem which is building up. And that's why it is acceptable. And I think because this is a new way of doing it. Mm-hmm. It's not a top-down approach.
Exactly, and I think that's something we heard from our speakers this morning as well, right? Is how the entire development industry needs to be flipping that mindset of I'm the donor, you're the beneficiary, I know, you don't, I tell you what to do.
No, I'll just one more point. What we have been arguing from the day one, that whenever we say we are donating cloth or utensil or footwear, whatever we have, that itself is a wrong notion. I mean, if I have used this for, say, 4 lectures or 3 months, with what right I'm even saying it, I'm donating it? I'm actually discarding it. Mm-hmm. I need to be thankful to the person who is using my second-hand goods, because that's the person who is the keeper of my emotions, my hard-earned money, the time which I took in a mall to look for a nice shirt or t-shirt. So, and that's the reason it is accepted, no other reason. So people are actually not working for that family kit which we give to people. That's just one small part of it. People are working because their problem is solved and the dignity is maintained.
Exactly. Well, I think that's a great way to end. Thank you so much, Stephanie and Anshu. Please join me in thanking them for their time today.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.